suppose you guys came here to hear about a little bit of Volkswagen stuff, huh? A little bit of dubbing, maybe some all-wheel drive goodness. You know, if you're not rubbing, you're not dubbing. The year was 2002. The Mark IV Golf had been out for 6 years. Volkswagen came out with a new 4-motion all-wheel drive system, which is still currently used, and another Volkswagen exclusive, the power plant. Now this V6 sandwich, called actually the VR6, was a 3.2 liter diamond in the rough, stout little motor that powered the first of the Golf R family called the R32. No, not that R32, but during the lifetime of these VR6 motors, people have been known to make anywhere from 500 to 600 horsepower, revving super high and having car enthusiasts everywhere taken back when they realize that Volkswagen is here to stay, and more importantly, they're here to play. Now, again, in 2005, the VR6 was brought back for the Mark V R32 model with a 10 horsepower bump in power, along with DSG, also known as a direct shift gearbox, which brought the car's 0 to 60 down roughly half a second. Now, unfortunately, it was not very easy to get your hands on a Mark V R32 in the United States, as Volkswagen actually had limited production in the US down to only 5,000 of these cars. Now, brought into the modern era, the Golf R has remained a staple in the Volkswagen hot hatch lineup for the past 2 gens and has been powered by a 2.0 liter turbocharged 270 plus horsepower monster, which honestly is kind of a lot for these little cars, and it definitely has room to grow, which is exactly what it is that we're here to talk about today. Now, a lot of people are thinking you guys just did a video recently on the Mark 7 GTI. However, these motors do have a lot of differences from the factory, believe it or not. Now, with the Golf R model compared to the GTI power plant, the Golf R came with a modified cylinder head, exhaust valves, valve seats and springs, upgraded pistons, a larger intercooler, a larger turbo, and of course, the coveted R badge that you can get on your car that lets every GTI owner know daddy's coming to town. The Audi S3 and the Mark 7 Golf R share quite a bit of the same platform. Now, the ride height of this car also sits a little less than an inch lower to the ground compared to the GTI, and it is equipped with something called dynamic chassis control, which ultimately lets you adjust your suspension stiffness, which is allowing you to either corner better in a race, or if you wanted to, you could ride on cloud-like suspension when it's in comfort mode. As you go and start to add power to these cars, you start to run into a few opportunities to upgrade parts on them, and of course, that's something that we're gonna go ahead and get into here just a little bit later on. All right, you guys, now before we jump into today's video, I wanna make sure that you all know about our summer style giveaway that's happening on our site for the month of August. Now, you can win a new look for your car, including coilovers, wheels, lighting, engine bay aesthetics, and more. Every dollar spent on our site is 1 entry to win. You also get double entries on parts bought from our sponsored brands that you see here. Not only that, but all MAPerformance merch proceeds go towards the Wounded Warrior Project. So make sure that you head on over to our site and get entered for the giveaway right after you finish this video. But let's jump in to what we're talking about today. All right, guys, the first pro on the list of pros is gonna be that this car is just obviously overall super fun. It comes with a decent amount of horsepower from the factory, so if you're going out on a little spirited drive, you're gonna have a ton of fun. Plus, as you start to modify them, these cars even then sound more and more incredible. I know personally firsthand that driving these cars with a downpipe and cat bag really wakes these things up, and it sounds absolutely amazing. Outside of that, these cars, obviously, when equipped with the DSG, they shift incredibly fast. And with that being said, you can go out and have fun even on spirited drives. You take your Golf R out there to go beat her up a little bit, you know? All right, guys, the next pro on the list of pros is gonna be that these cars are very utilitarian. And by that, I mean that they're really nice for everyday practicality things. You got that nice convenient, you could say it. It's a convenient hatchback. So if you're going to take this thing to the grocery store, you can go ahead and get it opened right up, throw all the groceries in there with no hassle. You're not reaching far into your trunk to go and dig something out of the back. And not to mention, these things all came with 4 doors for more fun and friends. So you could go ahead and fit all the people you need to, or even a car seat in the back without necessarily having to, put the whole seat down and reach the car seat in there. For those of us with kids, you kind of know what I'm talking about here. But anyways, you don't have to go through any of those hassles. You got 4 doors for all the things you might need 4 doors for. Next up is that this car is a great looking car, especially once you throw it down on the ground a little bit, lower it, slam it, rubbing and dubbing. If you do that, this thing's gonna look great, especially once you throw on a new set of wheels. It's gonna make this thing look absolutely incredible. These Golf Rs, they're incredibly good looking cars. I'm personally a huge fan of them. They're obviously super popular, getting lowered and slammed and on some crazy wheels, but these cars also perform incredibly well. So you see a lot of practical lowering and practical wheel setups as well, not just people who are bagging it and throwing it into shows and things of that nature. So again, they look absolutely phenomenal, and that's gonna be this pro on the list. The last pro on the list of pros is gonna be that with only just a few simple bolt-ons, people are getting these cars into the 11s with respect to the quarter mile at least. And so again, if you're looking to put some good times down, or you're just looking to take this thing out to the track and maybe hurt some feelings on your friends, you might have a bit of luck, especially if your friends don't have a super heavily modified car. You're gonna be putting them to shame. The same parts on yours. So anyways, apples to apples, if you were to do the same thing on another car, it might not be as fast. So that's why this one is making it onto our list of pros, because for a relatively low price, you can get this thing into the 11s, which is pretty fun. All right, you guys, now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the cons of modifying your Golf R. Of course, there's a decent list of pros, which for a lot of people make it worth it, but that's not to mention that there aren't some cons when it comes to modifying this, and we think that you should be informed. The first con that's gonna be on the list of cons is gonna be that the turbo tends to give out relatively early on, and I'm gonna go ahead and quote one of our sales guys here, Alex. Alex said, "The worst thing about modifying a Mark 7 Golf R is when you find your turbine wheel in the downpipe after it just used the catalytic converter materials as lunch." So I'd suggest an upgrade. As Alex stated, this thing tends to yeet itself out of the turbo, and you might find it somewhere else. So again, you're gonna wanna go ahead and replace that turbo before it becomes a bigger problem, because they tend to give out. Now the next con is gonna be that there's a considerable amount of oil consumption from the rear main seal, and if you're going in there to do that job, because I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, this one is not a fun one to do, you might as well plan on upgrading your clutch if your car is one with a manual transmission, because obviously at that point in time, you're already gonna be knuckles deep into this thing, and you might as well go ahead and give it the full onion. Now the next con on our list of cons is gonna be that the front wheel drive bias in these all-wheel drive cars creates a little bit of understeer. And with that being said, it obviously makes it a little bit more difficult to control when you're throwing the car into a turn at a high speed. Now, with that being said, there's a few things you can do to correct that, anywhere from various bump steer options to better tires even, to go ahead and just counteract the natural understeer that the car would have. So again, looking into a nicer set of grippier tires, possibly some different bump steer things, gonna help you correct those things out of the car as it sits from the factory. Now the next con is gonna be a little bit of maintenance in regards to the fact that the water pump housing on these tend to crack. Like on the GTI, these tend to be a much weaker point of the engine extremities that tend to fail. And with that being said, water pump on this isn't gonna be necessarily a super simple or fun thing to do as a job. And with that being said, you're gonna wanna go ahead and replace it before you're actually left there stranded on the side of the road without a water pump. The next one on the list of cons is gonna be that the PCV system is a little bit finicky. After all, it is a Volkswagen, so there are to be some things expected there. All right, you guys, now the very last con on our list of cons is gonna be that there's a considerable amount of carbon buildup in the head. We're seeing people with, even as low as 50 to 55,000 miles needing to go ahead and take these things apart and walnut blast them to go ahead and clean off all that carbon buildup. Much similar to how us N54 guys have to go ahead and do that. I know it's not very fun. However, there are a few things that you can do to help prevent some of that carbon buildup from happening, including, something as simple as a catch can system, or even going ahead and converting it over to port injection, because the way it's going to go ahead and reroute the fuel over the valve is going to help prevent some of that carbon buildup from ever taking place, and thus you would have that maintenance interval a lot less frequently. However, obviously, if you drive this car for a super long time, you may end up still wanting to do that down the road as a preventative measure, but just not at 50 to 55,000 miles. Obviously, that kind of sucks. And as it turns out, that's going to be the end of the list of these pros and cons. I guess you'll go and have to let us know what you think. Is this car worth buying? Yes or no? Let us know down in the comments why you would or would not want to buy a Volkswagen Golf R, especially the Mark 7. That's the one we're talking about today. And so that's where we're going to leave it with you guys to let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Of course, if you're looking for parts for this, we also make them. We also go ahead and sell other people's parts at MAPerformance.com. And as always, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss another one of our videos. With that being said, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.